we're not buying this anymore. We've had it up to here. We want to know what you have. We've got shafts that go down 2,000 feet, and there's a spiral in it. What the heck is that? It's fallen angel technology, Nephilim architecture. The difference is I've got prophecy. You've got nothing.
L.A. Marzulli, thank you so much for hopping on here to explain what everybody's talking about right now. It is all over my X feed. It's all over YouTube with recommended videos of people trying to explain what is underneath the pyramids at Giza. And there has been some recent developments about this, and I figured I'd just turn to my expert, L.A. Marzulli, to help me understand what is going on here.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on as always. And we use the term expert in this particular area loosely, but I was on a phone call on Saturday with Gary Stearman talking about this very thing, going back and forth. We released a program last week on it when it came out, and I just did a 45-minute presentation, which should be released sometime today on our YouTube channel, L.A. Marzulli. The first thing is, the naysayers are already pushing back against the idea that these 8 shafts, which go down basically 2,116 feet, 645 meters below the earth. And then there's this other shaft which goes this way. It's 1.2 miles with these huge cubicles. And look, I've watched some of the presentations. Hopefully they're going to do something soon, but there's 6 people there, and their reputations are on the line. This is not a canard. It's not a ruse. It's not some AI generated nonsense. According to them, the data is very real, and they intend to uphold it. Again, circling back to Gary Stearman, we believe that what we're looking at is pre-flood, and it's fallen angel technology. Nephilim architecture. That's what it is. I've never believed for a second, Zawi Hawass, with all due respect, pyramid, and he goes off, the Egyptians were great builders and all this other nonsense. And it's just like, excuse me, they did not build the Great Pyramid. And what most people don't understand, the pyramid is not a 4-sided pyramid, it's an 8-sided pyramid, because each side is instead of being straight across, it's slightly convex. But you don't see that unless you're in the air.
Oh, really?
You don't see that. In other words, they didn't even know that until someone flew over with an airplane and went, wait a minute, this thing's got 8 sides, which means that it's...
So it's more like a hypercycloid than it is a pyramid.
Well, it's, in other words, let's say this is the side. It should be flat. I'm accentuating it. It indents. So there's 8 sides. It's very, very complex. The mathematics behind it, the amount of blocks that were used. And people for years have been going, the Egyptians did it with sand ramps. And well, if you can't cut the limestone blocks with copper chisels and saws, and your construction is slipshod, then what are we really looking at here? It's not a burial, because the only cartouche on it is in a place above the king's chamber, which no one discovered really till sometime in the 20th century. And there's a cartouche that says Khafre or Khufu. Khufu. Well, that's fine, but that could be put at any time. The sarcophagus in what they call the sarcophagus, whatever that is, because there's no lid to it. So it's not a sarcophagus. We don't know what it is. But that box, let's just call it the box, that's in the king's chamber will not fit through the door. So how did they get that in? And then on top of the king's chamber are these huge, immense granite blocks, which are sitting as the roof of the king's chamber, the size of railroad cars. They are, and they come from Aswan, 500 miles away. So, Mr. Zawi Hawass, with all due respect, sir, just show us how that was done in the ancient world. How did they haul, these blocks, which are just tons and tons of material, and how did they put them up? Because the king's chamber is about 2/3 up in the Great Pyramid, so it's like right in here. So how was that done? The mathematics behind it, the fact that if you were to take all the land masses on the planet and put them all together, Pangea, and then find the center point where there's equal land masses, guess where it winds up? Bam, right at the Great Pyramid. The platform is basically completely level. How was that done? It's beyond human endeavor, which is why I call it fallen angel technology, Nephilim architecture. If big word, underline if the radar imagery, the LIDAR imagery holds up, it's the greatest discovery of the 21st century. I mean, without doubt.
Wow.
And what it does is it changes the narrative completely. That, okay, there's a hidden history that's been deliberately obfuscated from the peoples of the world. But guaranteed, the ancient astronaut theorists and the New Agers will latch onto this as proof that we were visited by extraterrestrials. That's how they're going to spin it. And that's what alarms me. That they're going to come out with this and go, oh, this is what happened, blah, 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 blah. Not so fast, citizen. That's one paradigm. The other paradigm is the biblical prophetic paradigm, which the fallen angels were here. And it's not a weekend frat party. That's what people don't get. When they come down and take women by force, you're looking at something that goes on for hundreds of years. And the Lord, in all his long suffering, waits and allows the thing to go, and then he sends the flood. This is why Robert Schoch, when he goes to the Sphinx, he looks at the Sphinx and goes, wait a minute. We're looking at some kind of flood here. We're looking at something that was unbelievable that eroded the Sphinx. This is water erosion. And of course, the Egyptologists, oh, who are you to say this? You are nothing to, they immediately, it's always the same thing. They never look at the evidence. They just attack the guy who's bringing it, which happens to me all the time. Yeah. Well, you're not an archaeologist. You're a pseudo-archaeologist. Excuse me. If I have DNA samples and I take them to a lab, the lab doesn't care what my worldview is or what I think about anything. It spits out the data. So if you don't like the data, go back and do your own LIDAR with the Great Pyramid and prove these guys wrong. Right now, I'm leaning very heavily that this is what they found will hold up. If it doesn't, okay, we all have egg on our face. So I'm kind of going out on a little bit of a limb here, but I think it's legit. I really do.
Yeah. So just to kind of summarize, there was a LIDAR or other types of technologies that somehow did a deep penetration into what is underneath the pyramids. What inspired this? What can you tell us about that whole process?
For years, people have thought that there was some sort of tunneling, something underneath the pyramid, a great room. And, they're already hinting at all this, all the New Agers, all the occultists. See, Edgar Cayce was right. There's a hidden room. Well, let's walk through that for a second. Edgar Cayce was a trance medium. That's what he was. So he would go into a trance and he would count down, and then this entity would appear to him. So, of course, the entity, which is demonic, in my opinion, with all due respect to those who believe Edgar Cayce was right on, he's channeling. He's a trans medium. There's nothing new under the sun. So the entity, of course, knows about the stuff under the pyramid because he was part of it, for crying out loud. See the way that works? Of course he knows about it. So it's like, woo, 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 woo. No, this is a fallen angel. This is a demon who was part of the whole pre-flood structure. And I've believed for years, I actually did a program, like I said yesterday, the pyramid, it was a Giza power plant. There's a book, forgive me, I can't remember the author's name, but he talks about the Giza power plant. And he voiced this, I don't know, a decade ago, something like that. He's been there many times, and I believe him. I read the book, it was in my library. And I believe that the pyramid was some sort of an energy source, and there was a global network. The grid was lit up. And I'll tell you a story. When Richard Shaw, my late business partner, and I were down in Cusco, Peru, the first time we were down there, 12,000 feet above sea level. We had already been to Sacsayhuaman. We had been to Ollantaytambo. Our minds were blown. So it's the last night before we fly down to Lima, and then we head home, right? And we had a wonderful dinner, and it's just Rick and I and another gentleman, but he wasn't really with us. Just Rick and I were walking on the streets of Cusco back to our hotel. And all of a sudden, I'm getting this download. And I'm going like, Rick, are you getting what I'm getting? He's going, oh my gosh, what's going on? He's getting the same download that I'm getting simultaneously. That's never happened to me before. So I'm like, I stop walking. I'm like leaning up against the wall, like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. That night, we stayed up basically all night, like 2 or 3 in the morning. We're running back and forth to each other's hotel rooms. What are we going to do with this? What are we going to do with this? It became number 6 in the Watcher series. It's called The Secret Cosmic War. And what we realized, what the Lord showed us, that there was a grid that connected all these sites in the antediluvian world. All these sites were interconnected. And once we knew that, and I was reading Grid of the Gods at that time. So nothing, it was like a cosmic 8 cushion shot on a pool table. It was like, how did that work? And we were just blown away. So when we went with it, of course, it was everybody, oh, church, what's for dinner, honey? I mean, it's just amazing. And yet we put that together in The Secret Cosmic War. What people don't get is that was the days of Noah. And the fact that this is being revealed now in this window of time is unprecedented, absolutely unprecedented.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, I might be just kind of extrapolating this a little bit, but those pyramids, in those different locations around the world, because there's pyramids in the Mayan pyramids, there's pyramids in different places in Africa. I mean, outside of Egypt as well, there's pyramids in many different places. So there's a grid, or there's a network between them. Was that the first World Wide Web or internet?
Bingo. You just got it. And that's what we talked about. That's what we linked it in Watchers 6. There was a grid that enslaved the world on some level. That grid has now been built. Right now it's benevolent, and we're using it. It's the World Wide Web. But when the Antichrist takes power, he will use that to enslave the entire planet. And we're already seeing some of that with the censorship on YouTube, for the perfect example. If there's no free speech, then what do we have? Who's checking the fact checkers? I did a 1-minute short on CERN, which went viral. It got like 2.4 or 2.6 million hits. Wow. Just beyond stupid, right? And of course, the fact checkers came all over that. Oh, the YouTuber, they don't even address me by name. Instead of Dr. Marzulli, it's the YouTuber. Let's disparage this as much as possible, and none of this is true. Excuse me, Josh Peck and I did a whole rebuttal on this. Who's fact checking the fact checkers? Excuse me, CERN was built on what used to be the remains of the Temple of Apollo. Number one. Number two, there was an occult ceremony at the dedication. Not making this up. Number three, Josh Peck has the quote in his book from one of the head honchos at CERN talking about, we may open up a gateway and let something in. So everything I stated in that little 1-minute vignette, which went viral, was absolutely true. And see, this is problematic. Who are these fact checkers? It's like, and why do they have the last say? So there is no free speech, because you say something, we're going to get the fact checkers on you, doggone it, and make sure that this doesn't go viral. What happens with this information, with the Great Pyramid in Giza, is it completely overturns the existing narrative and stands it on its head. It's like, don't tell us that this happened because it didn't. Stop lying to us. You don't know. You're creating a narrative which fits the evolutionary process, the Darwinian theory. We have a petition which will go up this week, which we're going to hand out to the Secretary of Interior, asking that these museums, which are funded by taxpayer dollars, right, now create a complete list of what they have. Because museums are the caretakers of our history, and they're not being honest. They have an agenda. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. This is in the Field Museum in Chicago. And as a Christian, you should take umbrage with it, because I know I do. This is a mural about 20 feet by 10 feet high. And it says this: from so simple a beginning, endless forms, most beautiful and most wonderful, have been and are evolved. Charlie Darwin. Well, that's your religion, okay? Now, you can tell me it's a scientific principle, but that's your religion because it's never been proven. And the fact that you promulgate that at every single museum, which, by the way, is being funded by taxpayer dollars, we're not buying this anymore. We take umbrage in this. This is an absolute frontal assault against what Christians, who, by the way, we are the majority in the United States. And I think we showed that in the last election. I'm getting on my soapbox here. But, we've had it up to here. We want to know what you have. We want to know everything that the Smithsonian has in the basement. We want detailed lists. We want photographs. We want access. Why? Because it's taxpayer dollars. Either that or just stop funding the museums. But we've had it up to here with this nonsense. The scientific community and academia has force-fed the evolutionary paradigm to everybody. Now it's being taught. It's been, when I was in school, it was taught as fact. And that's a gazillion years ago, before Abraham Lincoln, for crying out loud. So, we got to stand up when we got to push back. Oh, you're just a religious fanatic. No. How about if you're a Darwinian fanatic? What's the difference? You tell me. You cling to your Darwinian paradigm just as much as I cling to my Judeo-Christian roots. The difference is I've got prophecy. You got nothing. You have nothing you can show us on the planet that's becoming something else. So what this does, if it holds, is it completely collapses the paradigm. They're already panicking. One archaeologist said, well, I'm not really buying that because, the Maya temples were built on caves and everything else. Excuse me. We've got shafts that go down, 1,200 feet, 2,000 feet, and there's a spiral in it. What the heck is that? It's a machine. It's a very complex machine. It's fallen angel technology, Nephilim architecture. It's not some machine that was built by the Pleiadians or the guys from Zeta Reticuli, and it fits the biblical narrative. This is what the flood destroyed.
One of the things that I think is really interesting about Egypt, and it has always fascinated me, is that they wear these interesting hats that kind of elongate their skulls.
Yep.
And behind you, as always, is an elongated skull that you have. And it is there is something about this look that the Egyptians appear to be copying. Yep. And I know that the Pharaoh often referred to himself as a god. And so with all these things, and you're talking about fallen angel technology, really being a center point of that, did the Egyptian culture just try to copy what they were seeing potential Nephilim doing?
They're doing it because there's actually a movie. It's called 10,000 BC. And it's really cool because the god that's, creating the pyramid and all this other stuff, you never really see him. It's the typical monster movie. You only see a flash like that, and then the monster disappears type of thing. Well, he's got an elongated skull in that film. Raiders of the Lost Ark, when the Crystal Skull film, at the end, when they're all seated on their thrones, they all have elongated skulls. Gee, what a coinkydink, right? Yes. The short answer to that is yes. Hello down there, a 2024 Super Bowl ad, when the ET, the gray, is in the ship and presses the button, huge elongated skull. It's predictive programming. Something is going on here. Absolutely. Why are they doing this? Why are they taking an infant and cradle boarding the infant to get an elongated skull? Because it was a sign of royalty. It was a sign of the gods that were here. Because the people that were here looked at these guys and worshiped them as gods because they could do all sorts of stuff. They could levitate rocks and boulders and cut stone. And, just think if you've got Nephilim running around 12 to 14 or even taller, I mean, all of a sudden it changes the equation. Mm-hmm. Well, what happened to bones? Well, what happened to all the bones in the flood? I mean, read Emmanuel Zelikovsky's book, Worlds in Collision, Earth in Upheaval. which again, he was completely blacklisted by mainstream archaeology. How dare you challenge the prevailing paradigm? Heresy. I mean, it's a religion. It's an absolute religion. And any of us who go against that are just called a bunch of names. Because let's not attack the science, let's attack the people that are bringing it to the forefront, which is already happening with this group of scientists who have done LIDAR over the pyramid. Now they're already being attacked. And this is why they've got to soon, maybe this week, come up with the information, how they did it, why they think it is. And, I've looked at the LIDAR images. I mean, there are pillars that are going down there. Is it a false reading? Could be. That's why they need to defend their science and, get a peer review thing out there.
Yeah. So one thing I've learned is that in nature, there is very few straight lines and right angles.
There are none. Right. Very few. Very few.
So if there is something like that, it does stand out. And so that's why there's images of things on Mars that seem to have right angles and straight lines. And it kind of makes you question as well. I mean, can things happen by chance? Yeah, but most things that happen by chance actually happen by purpose. And so what you're talking about also with the Smithsonian and the museums, I'm grateful for that petition that is going to be going out because I know you've done a lot of research in the western part of the United States, and there's a lot of things that have been found, but they've just disappeared after they've been found.
They disappear all the time.
Talk about that a little bit.
Well, my work with the Catalina giant, for instance. So I got wind, and I'll show you what they do. I mean, this is par for the course. Why would they do this? And it's in the book, On the Trail of a Nephilim, shameless plug. Look how thick that is. It's an oversized book. It's actually 3 books in one. And what's amazing about all this is here's the original picture. And what they did is they cropped the picture they cropped the giant out of the picture. And I'll show you the original picture in just a second. So here's the original picture here. This is the one I found out on Catalina Island in the archives. And we had it measured by 3 different researchers. It's in situ. It's not a pile of bones. Ralph Glidden is behind him. He's 5'8". So I published this, okay? And we went back to the Catalina Island Museum about 6 months later, and we walk in, and this is what we see. My book is underneath. The museum piece is above it. They cropped the giant out of the picture.
Wow.
Now, why would they do that? They're supposed to be purveyors of truth. Well, they didn't like the truth. They didn't like the truth that I brought forth. So they just cropped the giant out of it. Now, that went viral, that film, that picture of us holding up what the original picture looked like. And, of course, we never got an answer out of them. Well, why did you do this? Well, why would you crop the giant out? So then what they did to the museum in Catalina, they printed that picture huge. They blew it up 4 feet by 2.5 feet, whatever, and it was in a section of the museum. And then I'm standing next to it and weighing in on it with a cell phone video. Peggy did that. And I just said, well, at least the picture's here, but they're not telling you what you're looking at. And that's unfortunate. So you would think if they were really purveyors of truth, come and see the giant that was found right here on Catalina Island. The line would be out around the block. But they don't do that because it goes against the Darwinian paradigm. Because there are no, I remember reading, and I thank Judd Burton for this. Judd Burton gave me, it's Archaeology 101. It burned in the fire. But, in the very first chapter, there are no giants. Why is the first chapter of this book? I've been in museums. I've gone toe-to-toe with the head guy at the museum. Well, what happened to the giant bone? Well, they didn't know how to measure back then. Excuse me, really? A doctor didn't know how to use a tape measure in 1920? I mean, are you kidding me? Or even 1890? I'm not buying that argument. The Native Americans built all this. They just forgot that they had done so. Seriously? Native Americans don't forget anything. It's in the oral tradition. Hello? Now who's the racist? right? By saying that they had just forgotten that they had done so. We are in what would be a war of truth. That's what this is. It's a war of what really is the truth. What are we looking at? What is the truth? And the truth, of course, from our perspective, is the biblical prophetic narrative. That is the truth. What was written will come to pass. What was foretold is unfolding all around us. And so I just find it just incredible that this information comes out now. And again, I'll warn you guys again that the New Agers and the ancient astronaut theorists, they're going to spin this whole thing. See, we told you they were here thousands of years ago, and that will become the prevailing paradigm. But I got out in front of this. The moment I saw it, I started warning the church. This is what they're going to say, but it's not. This is fallen. And again, Gary Stearman and I had a long conversation. Fallen angel technology, Nephilim architecture. That's what you're looking at.
So let me ask you this, LA. Why are these things being disclosed now? And why have they been hidden? Like, what is the purpose of them being hidden, and why are they being disclosed now?
Because I think the Lord's coming back. I think he's coming back soon. I mean, what's going on in the Middle East? People go, see, it's all going to be good now. There's peace, blah. No, there's no peace. Same thing. They're lobbing rockets over on the Lebanese border, which is where we go in the Amatril of a Nephilim tour. Northern Israel. I'm going to bring 50 people into a war zone. Are you out of your mind? No way I'm doing that. And this whole thing. And see, this is the problem. Replacement theology has replaced the church for Israel. And if that's your paradigm, your eschatological paradigm, if that's the paradigm in which you view the Bible, good luck. You'll never understand what you're looking at, because the church is not Israel, and we are not in the millennial kingdom. Trust me, we're not, because that's what they allegorize everything. Thank you, St. Augustine. And here we are. The rest is history. Our millennial view. There is no 1,000-year millennium. The entire Catholic Church doesn't believe in the rapture of the church. They don't believe in a literal 1,000 years of Jesus reigning. I can't wait. Because his feet touch the Mount of Olives, and that baby splits in two. And he rules from where? Jerusalem. He's not ruling in Walla Walla, Michigan. He's ruling from Jerusalem. And I think we're really close. I'm not a date setter. You've heard me say this before. I'm not a date setter, but maybe next Wednesday we go up. That's tongue in cheek. But I think we are in a window of time that is absolutely unprecedented. And remember, Israel will stand alone. Israel will stand alone. Ezekiel 38, the young lions go, hey, if you come to take spoil, what are you guys doing? We're the young lions. Trump's not going to get involved. Are we in the window where we might see Ezekiel 38? Everybody's on the playing field, and it can change in a dime. The whole thing can turn on a dime. Look what happened in Syria just a short while back. Assad flees the country. Al-Qaeda essentially comes in, takes control. Now there's genocide going on, 20, 30,000 people slaughtered. Not a peep in the news media. Not a peep anywhere about it. It's a media blackout. And, it was interesting. I watched, when I go to church, I go to Dan Plord's church in Jupiter, Florida. So I don't go there. We watch him online. And yesterday he taught this great teaching on Genesis 6 and, Genesis 3:15 and Israel. It's just really, really great. And he talked about Israel and all this other stuff and the prophecies concerning Israel. But if you're an amillennialist, well, the church inherits all the promises of Israel. No, the church is the church. Israel was Israel, two distinct groups. We didn't inherit anything. We get blessings. But Israel, the 7-year period deals with the time of Jacob's trouble, not Fred, Barney, and Hal. It doesn't do that. It's Jacob. It's always Jacob. It goes back to Israel. That's who it deals with. They will look on him whom they have pierced and mourn for him as an only son. That has nothing to do with us. We know who he is, but they don't. And they'll realize they missed it. And that's why there's weeping. They mourn for him as an only son. They realize, oh my gosh, we missed it. But they were supposed to miss it. That's part of the prophecy. I mean, this thing is it's mind-boggling. It really is. Just mind-boggling.
So we need to be constantly aware of what is going on in our world today. And as things are being disclosed, is this another rung of disclosure, LA?
I'm toying with it.
You're toying with it.
I'm toying with it because what's going to happen is, like I said, I've said it 3 times, the ET crowd's going to jump all over this and insist, aha, ancient astronauts were here. Here's the proof. That's what they're going to say. That's how it's going to be spun.
So definitely make sure that you subscribe to L.A. Marzulli's YouTube channel. There will be links in the description here because he gives updates regularly, daily, basically.
Yeah.
And L.A., it's always great to be able to talk to you and to get this amazing insight and grab a hold of On the Trail of the Nephilim. You can go to lamarzulli.net to get that, as well as the Rungs of Disclosure, which we are proud publishers of here at Charisma. And LA, thank you so much, brother, for being here with us